Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. So I already started this video, but I thought I'd do a little precursor clip here to explain this airplane, since I've never featured it on my channel before, but I've had it for a very long time. This is a scratch built, larger than quarter scales, 1 in 3.85 scales, 12 feet long. It's a T38 Talon. I scratch built this back in 2012. So she's 10 years old now. It's all built out of blue foam and fiberglass and carbon fiber, and it's been around for a long time. So it's powered by 2 electric fans currently, but I'm doing a bunch of upgrades to convert to turbine, and that's what this video is about. So we'll have videos of it flying and everything once it's all done. I'm waiting on the turbines to show up still. I got to order tailpipes and everything else still, but trying to do all this other work first. That way, once I have everything power plant wise, it'll go pretty quick. So anyways, a little backstory on the airplane. My friend Andy and I actually both built one of these. His unfortunately crashed, I think back in 2013, or actually no, 2012. He built his first and I built mine along the same time frame, but he finished his first. Anyways, I've been flying this airplane for a long time now. It's got almost 100 flights on it, and I've never really had a single problem with the airplane. I mean, it's always just been really solid. So it performs pretty well and it gets decent flight times, but my batteries are super old, and I got the turbines recently with my Panther here and kind of fell in love with them, and I thought, well, this would make an awesome turbine model. So anyways, yeah, I actually had to sell the airplane, geez, I don't know, about 7 years ago now, 8 years ago, and it was gone for a few years. The owner didn't fly it, he just kept it in the house, took care of it, but a friend of mine gave me the money to buy it back, and that was probably one of the biggest, coolest things that anyone has ever done for me. And so anyways, I was able to get the airplane back and started flying it right away, and I think when I sold it, it only had 30 flights on it. So I put a ton of flights on it in the last 4 years that I've had it back. So anyways, that's my T38. That's what we're working on. So enjoy the rest of this little video explaining all the upgrades we're doing to the airplane. Once it has flown successfully a number of times and it's all dialed in with the new Spectrum radio setup, the new servos, and the new turbines, I plan on completely refurbishing the airplane, building a whole new cockpit, new canopies. These ones are in pretty bad shape. The airplane is it's kind of beat up. I mean, it's got lots of, if you look up close, there's lots of little dings in it and stuff. I mean, look how big this thing is. I have huge hands, by the way. This thing is massive. It's 12 feet, 85-inch wingspan, 45 pounds with batteries. So turbine powered, it should only be about 35 dry, which is super light for something this big. So it should fly really well. Anyways, I could talk about this airplane forever, so let's just get on to the video. Hope you enjoy it. Alright, so the last little bits on the T6 are done. I'm ready to cover it. A few things left, like servo installs and control horn and stuff like that, but I got the wing mounting stuff in, the hatch is done. I used a larger carbon fiber tube instead of the little wood dowel they give you. And I also added a second layer of wood to the stab, because that lower layer is all that it was supposed to have, which is probably fine for what it was designed for, but since it's got the big motor on it, figured we're gonna need tail weight anyways, might as well add some strength to the tail. So I also enlarged the size of the rudder, and this is also triple thickness, basically 16th inch on both sides of the stock tail, and just the rudder is enlarged. Got the ailerons all done. I made a canopy floor and got the canopy fitted. So as it sits right now, it weighs 15 ounces. So should be about 20, I'm thinking, when it's all finished, which might be, a couple more than what it would have been with an 049 back in the day with older radio stuff. But I mean, it's got retracts and a huge motor, so that's not too bad. The airframe is super light. I think the airframe only weighs like, I don't know, 6 ounces or something like that. 7 ounces, super light. But anyways, that's it for the Texan update. Now I need to order some covering since we don't have any hobby shops around here anymore. The closest one's about an hour away. I don't have time for that right now, so I'm just gonna order some covering. Probably do a yellow one just because it's so small. But next up on my project list is I'm going to be converting my T38 to turbine. So as you can see, it's pretty big compared to the T6. So I'm starting off by replacing all my servos with these servos have been in here since I built it, and they're about 10 years old now. So I got some really good servos for it compared to what's in here. I don't even remember what's in here. It's some kind of high techs. The flap servos weren't even big enough to pull the flaps down all the way at flight speed. So at half flap they would come down, but at full flap they wouldn't get all the way to their full extension until it got down to like flare speed. Basically they would be the rest of the way down, but in the pattern, I have pictures of it in the pattern, and it's supposed to be at full flap and they're not even close. So the torque of these servos wasn't enough. So anyways, I'm gonna be pulling out the fan systems. So these are Turbax fans. They're 120 millimeters. So they've served me well for a long time. Got almost 100 flights on this airplane. I'll probably hang on to these because they're still really good power units. I'll put them in something. Might put one in the F-18 and make that thing a rocket, because these make like on a test stand about 18 pounds of thrust. Installed the model, I would imagine they're closer to 15, maybe even less, because these tailpipes are super long. It's like a 5 foot long tailpipe, maybe a 4.5 foot. But anyways, so my batteries are basically, I've had the batteries since I built this thing. So the batteries are 10 years old. They need to be replaced. The flight times aren't terrible, but they aren't great. Performance isn't terrible, but it's not spectacular. So I'm going to be putting in turbines. So I'm going to be doing a couple of Swinwin 80s. So I don't want to get too crazy with the power. It's a big model you're thinking for twin 80s, but with no batteries, this airframe only weighs 35 pounds with everything in it with no batteries. So that's pretty light for 280s. And the 80s will weigh about the same as the fans and the ESCs. So I'll be adding a little bit of weight with fuel tanks. I'll have to use a little bit of nose weight. It's gonna need a pound or so way up in the nose to get it to CG, because normally the batteries sit right about here, which is pretty close to CG. So it really shouldn't take much weight to make it CG with the turbines in it. So anyways, so that's what I'm gonna start doing. I gotta figure out where I'm gonna put my tanks. It seems like there's a lot of room, but there's not really a lot of room because the turbines are gonna be back here. The CG is up in this range, so they'll probably end up right here. So they'll end up forward of the CG just a little bit. They'll probably have a couple stacked on top of each other. I'll probably just get some Dubro fuel tanks or something. I'm not gonna get crazy. And I will probably extend these to the turbines at some point, but it's not really necessary. So anyways, that's where we're at. I got to put new servos in this thing. I'm gonna have way more torque, but again, I don't want to get crazy with speed and power. I don't really need it to be any faster. It's fairly fast as it is. Once you get the jet sound in there, it'll seem faster than it's going anyways. It'll be just as fast as everyone else's turbines this size, which most of them aren't that fast. They just seem like they are because they sound cool. So anyways, the hope is it'll have a little more thrust with the turbines, not a whole lot more statically than the electric setups, but the weight will be quite a bit less, especially as I start burning into fuel. So when I'm halfway through my tanks, I'm going to be pretty close to 1-to-1 thrust, and the landing weight, not like it landed fast or anything, but the landing weight will be way less than it was electric. So I didn't want to get crazy with power and put like 120s in it or something, which I actually considered, but I know myself and I probably end up ripping the wings or ripping the tails off of the thing going too fast. This airframe was never intended to even be as fast as it is currently, so it doesn't need to go any faster. A little more vertical would be nice, and double the flight time would be excellent. So that's what I'm shooting for. I'm shooting for a 7 or 8 minute flight, maybe a little bit more, and a little bit better vertical performance, and maybe just 5 or 10 miles an hour more top speed, but nothing crazy because it's already plenty fast enough. It doesn't need to be any faster. So anyways, I'm gonna start putting some servos in this thing, and we'll check in a little bit. All right, so this is gonna sound pretty bad, but I've never had these off since I painted the airplane. So basically these have never been removed. I know that because the screw heads all had paint in them, and I couldn't get my tool in there to loosen them, but I'm happy to note that everything looks pretty good still. Yeah, so these are super old high-tech 625s, which are super marginal. For the ailerons, no big deal, probably plenty of torque, but flaps, those flaps are giant. I did do a super short arm on the servo to try and help, and a really tall arm on the flap. Also the spacing with the pivot point, but I have a huge hand. This size, these flaps are monstrous. So anyways, that's a little embarrassing. I am going to install more than just 4 screws too when I put these back in. I'll probably triple that up. And I might do a little reinforcement on these servo blocks, although they seem pretty sturdy. But those are 1/4-inch birch plywood. Those are much better than most blocks you would see in an ARF, even in a turbine ARF. Some of them anyways. So yeah, so like these are the really old high techs. I don't even. In fact, I got these out of a plane from a friend that was a used airplane. So I built this airplane on a budget, like forever ago. It was super budget. So, and this whole thing's just getting beat up. It needed all new servos anyways, even if I wasn't going to convert it to turbine. So, but yeah, these flaps are giant. These things are huge. Oh man. All right, let me show you the servos that I bought for it. So these are the servos I'm going to use. These are the same servos that I have in my Panther, my turbine Panther. So these are Pro Modeler servos. So I'm using these for flaps and ailerons. These are 360 ounces of torque. Focus, little fella. Come on. All right, not going to focus. 360 ounces. And these are for the stabs. These are full CNC, ball bearing supported and all that. These are 630, and I got metal arms to go on the stabs. So these should be a substantial upgrade over these, which probably only have, I don't know, 100 ounces? I have to look up the specs. Probably not very much. So this is triple, and then these are double what the torque, what my current torque on my stabs are. But on my stabs, I have some of those old school high-tech 1/4 scale servos, which are giant. So I'm gonna save like a half a pound by switching to these servos on the tail, because those servos are like 8 ounces a piece or something crazy. So anyways, I gotta make some adapters to put those in the back of the airplane. But yeah, so I gotta start swapping this stuff out now. So I got the new servos in on the one side. I did have to make some 1/8-inch extensions to get the servo arms to go in the center of the slots. But I did have to make a new push rod for the flaps, a little bit shorter one. I just kind of stress test all these mounts. These things are strong, man. This is 1/8-inch ply, birch ply, so it's good stuff. Very strong. I'm going to add probably a few more holes on each side for fasteners. But yeah, these are 1/4-inch birch ply rails in here that are, I think they go out pretty far, and I think they go out pretty wide. So those are solid. Not worried about those. This is a little balsa skin, because the other side of this balsa is the skin. So there's only enough room for these servos and nothing more as far as depth goes. So anyways, just gotta get these screwed in, and then that'll be it for this side. Not too bad. Alright, so got the first side done. You can see I added extra fasteners in the corners and in the center, so this plate should not flex at all now. So these servos have a ton more torque. I got a nice full range of motion on that servo. to get the most torque out of it. But yeah, that's pretty sweet. Gotta do the other side now. So excuse the mess. And don't worry, I will not be using these old extensions. I'm gonna get new stuff. I just don't know how long of wires I need because everything's getting moved around with the turbine installs. So one of the big upgrades I'm doing with the T38 is the radio. So I've been using Airtronics for the whole 10 years. Receiver's probably never been out of the airplane. It's worked pretty well. I've had a few glitches here and there, but obviously the airplane's still here. Never had any big issues, but I switched over to Spectrum about a year and a half ago. So I'm using a DX18 version 2, and this is one of the newer 20 channel receivers, which is super nice because now I had all these channels on Y cords on my old radio setup. So not only did I not have adjustability between the flaps for roll and everything, I had no way of doing any like aileron adjustments. I couldn't do anything cool like that. So like everything was just super basic wide channel, which also means that the servos, especially the flap servos, which run a lot of strain in landing, weren't getting their full amount of juice because the power was split. So the load was being shared between the Y cord. So anyways, now I can do aileron differential and I can adjust the flaps individually, which is sweet. Plus I can do flap speed and everything else. So everything's hooked up. So now I got my flaps and I got my aileron differential now. Just sweet. Start off with that, kind of go from there, do some experimenting. Might be too much differential, we'll see. But anyways, just playing around with that. Need to set the expo and rates, but I got the flaps and everything all pretty well set up. So I was just never able to get that much deflection with the old servos in flight. So anyways, pretty stoked. Just need to order up some extensions, and I can tidy up all the wires and everything. And yeah, I've got to move on to the fuselage now and do the stab servos. Alright, so we got the fuselage down, obviously. Just got done setting up the stabs. You're gonna have to forgive me, the inside of this model is not pretty. I did not do my cleanest building in here, and this was 10 years ago, so don't be so hard on me. But so what I did was I made some adapter plates because before I had these huge quarter scale servos. These things are massive. So what I did was I made a little adapter plate. So now I've bolted in. It's super solid. It's not going anywhere. It's 1/4 inch birch plywood, so it's screwed in, so I can still remove this whole plate to be able to get to the servo screws. You see, it's kind of seeing there, but I got, ugh, that is ugly. Maybe this side's prettier. Probably not. So that's the push rod setup that I have. Those screws are drilled and tapped into the rods for the stab. It's a 1/4 inch piano wire. Honestly, I think that's probably one of the limiting factors for the speed on this airplane is the stab pivots. So they're 1/4 inch steel, but they're piano wires, so they have a little bit of flex to them. So even these servos are super tight. There's basically no slop in this setup at all, but I can still, if I really push on it, I can twist it a little bit with a good amount of force. Now we've had cameras on the airplane in flight, and you don't see these things bending at all or anything. And there's pictures where you can see this gap. I can move it by hand, but you can see this gap in the air in pictures, and it's just like it is on the ground. So anyways, that's one of the reasons why I didn't want to put huge turbines in this thing and have it go over 150, 160 miles an hour, because like I said before, it doesn't need to go that fast. 130, 140, 150, you know, on a pass into a climb or something, probably totally fine. We've done 150 out of dives with the EDF setup, so at that speed I'm not concerned because I know it's been solid, but anything over that definitely will have concerns. So I did pull the fans out, and like I said, this is not pretty in here, and I got to do a lot of cleanup. But this is all fiberglass inside, and some of it's patched up from after the first flight when it all got busted up in here. So I'm thinking I'm going to reinforce a couple of areas, but I'm going to make some adapter plates to go from these mounts to the turbines. The turbines are much smaller, so anyways, when it's a little prettier in here, maybe I'll show you guys more. It's never going to be like super nice, like expensive, you know, composite ARF of some sort, but anyways, looks good from 10 feet, so that's what we're going for. Anyway, so I got the elevators working. These servos are super fast, like I don't even know how many times faster than my old stuff, but way faster. So anyway, you see the torque from the servos moves the whole airplane on the stand, so pretty stoked. Everything turned out nice and tight. Like I said, there is no slop, basically. What I'm getting is twist in the rod, and that rod comes pretty far out, and it has another rod. The end of the main rod is slotted, and I have a big long metal rod that goes across there. It's tied into some bulkheads inside of here, and these are foam core with carbon fiber layups on them, so the stab itself is very strong. It's just now I think I'm getting into the limiting point, or the structural limit of those rods. And I might put some cameras in the plane and fly it around and see what it's doing some more, but I'm not super concerned at the current high speed that it's been up to, which is in the 150 range out of a dive. So flat and level, that shouldn't be a problem with turbines, but it's going to be something I'll be mindful about when I'm flying it. I won't be able to fly it just wide open for real long periods of time, just because it could get going pretty fast. So it's if it went 150 with just EDFs out of a shallow dive, then with the turbines it's definitely going to be quicker than that if I let it. So gonna have to practice some judicial throttle use. But anyways, those are the tailpipes that came out. They're over 4 feet long. They're freaking huge. And here's the fan systems over here. I pulled them out. So it's a Turbax fan unit. These are the original motors. Everything actually still looks really good on these. I mean, they're electric. They don't really wear out. I mean, eventually I'm sure they would, but I weighed them. They're 2 3/4 pounds with the ESC. So that's 5 or 6 ounces heavier than the whole turbine setup. So the tailpipes for the turbine will be heavier than those tailpipes. Not by a whole lot. They're pretty light, honestly. Not as light as Mylar film, but pretty light, all things considered. So basically, the weight on the airplane is a wash between the EDF and the turbines without fuel and without batteries. So, I mean, within a pound or so by the time I add fuel tanks and stuff like that. But it's going to be close. But the CG is, let's see, it's right about here or so. And I'll be able to put a little bit of weight all the way forward up here. And it should only take a pound or so to get it to balance. So maybe a pound and a half. But anyways, that's where we're at. You can kind of see the structure now, the way it was built. It's built like a box with triangle stock in the corners, and then everything on the outside was carved. Glass on the outside, and some of the areas are glass on the inside, like these are where the wing attach. Those are all glassed. The whole sides are glassed. This is all glassed inside, and then the little bit of this section is also glassed where the structure ties in, where this forward fuselage bolts together. So anyways, like I said, this thing's just getting long in the tooth. It's got dings and dents, and this The back end's all hammered from the time I launched the batteries out of it and had a pretty hard landing on the smack the tail cones. Stuff like that. It's just rough around the edges. It's 10 years old. It's got almost 100 flights, like I said. So anyways, hope you guys liked the video. And next time you guys see this airplane, it'll probably have turbines in it. So I gotta get the pipes ordered, fuel tanks, UATs, and I think I have everything else. So yep, that's it for now. Gotta hang this thing back up so I can put cars back in the garage. And just to give you an idea of how big it is, this is a 2.5 car garage, and it takes up a whole lot of it. So anyways, hope you guys like this video. We'll see you in the next one. Meh.